Okay, well, everybody, thank you to those of you who got on a little bit early to share some successes. That was fun. It's always great to hear. And let me see, and welcome to practice two. Today we're going to go over nurture your heart, practice two. It's a really good one. I was just saying before that one of the reasons why I do nurture your heart, why we go over our emotions on this second week, is because after the first week, everybody's really excited and really motivated and has all kinds of ideas for their goals and their actions. And sometimes the first week goes really well, but usually at some point, whether it's the first or the second or the third week, we hit a little bit of a wall and we don't get our goals done and we maybe feel bad about ourselves. And so that's a great opportunity to check in with our emotions and see what's getting in our way. So we're here to focus on our emotions and how they can sometimes derail our healing and how they can support our healing, and really mainly to focus on what are some tools that we can use every day to help stay on track with our emotions and going in the right direction. So a couple quick technical pieces. One is everybody's muted, and so you can make noise, do whatever you need to do, feel comfortable doing that. And if you have questions, please remember we'll have, I think, about 20 minutes at the end for Q&A, so you can write down any questions that you have and keep track of them. And if you have any technical issues at any time, at the bottom of the screen here is Liz's email address and her phone number, and you can always email or call her if something happens with the audio or with your connection or anything at any time. That would be, then you can absolutely jump in and reach out to her at any point. Okay, so let's get started. So our goals for today. First, we're going to review the importance of nurturing your heart and talk about why does that matter? Why are we doing this? And second, we're going to look at a bunch of different tools that you could possibly use to nurture your heart and address your emotions. Third, we're going to explore two very specific tools that you can use every day. And then we're going to finish that by 3 o'clock. And then for those who want to stay for the next half hour, for about 10 minutes, we're all going to work on our plan for the week. We're going to choose our actions and put them in our calendar for the week. And then we'll do 20 minutes of question and answer time. So that's the plan for today. And I just want to remind everybody to grab your course workbook, a calendar if you need it, a journal if you want that, and a place to just jot down any questions that come up for you that you want to set aside for the Q&A time. So first, let's get into why is this important? Why does it matter that we address our emotions and how to take care of them on a really regular basis when we're working to improve our health? Now, some of you who have been on my free trainings or my course last in the spring have seen this 1, 2, or 3 times. Personally, I feel like I can't see it enough because it's the foundation of so much of what we do. So what this is a theory of behavioral change. I'm just going to go over it real quick, especially for those of you who have already seen it. And these screenshots that we have here are from a video by rare.org. And it's narrated by Dan Heath, who's the co-author of a great book called Switch that I highly recommend on changing habits and organizational change. And it's all based on a theory by Jonathan Haidt of NYU, Professor Haidt of NYU. So the field of psychology, the way this works, it's shown that there are 2 systems in our brains, right? There's the rational system and the emotional system. Now, this fellow Jonathan Haidt came up with a great metaphor for how these systems work together. And he says that we can think of our brain as a human rider on top of an elephant, right? Now, the rider represents the rational system where we plan, we problem solve, and we use data, and we make really good decisions for ourselves. But the elephant represents the emotional system, and that emotional system is what provides the power to take action and carry out those decisions. So, as you can easily imagine, the challenge comes when these two disagree, when the rider wants to go in one direction, but that big emotional elephant wants to go in the other direction. Now, the rider can push and the rider can pull, but the elephant has a 6-ton weight advantage. So when the two have agreements, studies have actually shown that the elephant, that emotional mind, wins virtually every single time. So when your rational mind decides to cut out desserts, if your emotional mind is not on board and bought in at an emotional level, then your chances of success are really slim. Similarly, if you decide that, working out in the gym is going to be a great thing for you and you decide you want to do that, if your emotional mind is not behind that, then there will be no force behind that decision, and it's going to be really hard to do it. So the first and most important step to addressing this is noticing when our emotional mind is in control or blocking our progress, right? And then the second is to shift our emotional response so we can follow our rational minds more often. So I just want to share a couple of quick examples. I was working with a woman who was in her late 50s who had high cholesterol and high blood pressure, and she had been instructed by her doctor to work out. She had been given sort of a little 30-minute exercise regimen to do at the gym every day. And she just, for the life of her, could not get herself to do it. And finally, I started talking to her about, what was, physical exercise like for you as a kid? I think actually she wasn't in her mid-50s. I think she was in her early 60s. And she said, physical exercise for me as a kid, I didn't exercise. Said, I was kind of a slightly pudgy little girl, and I was made to feel bad about my body, and I always hated gym class. I always thought I was very uncoordinated, and I was chosen last for all the sports in gym and in recess. And, I just tried to avoid gym as much as possible and go to the back of the line. And, as a girl growing up at that time, 60 years ago, she was not encouraged to be athletic and not told that this was before Title IX, right? Before there was equal funding for girls and boys sports in public schools. So she just really didn't have an image of herself as athletic, and she realized that just walking into a gym made her feel like, an unhappy little pudgy girl again, which is actually, being a pudgy little girl is a great thing to be, but no one let her know that when she was little. So for her to be able to work out, she needed to find either a different kind of gym, or do a video at home, or do it with a friend, or change it to a dance class, or just go walking, or figure out something different than working out in a gym where there's like guys sweating and lifting weights. It was just too much for her. And so once she figured that out, she found some more creative options, and she was able to get more movement and exercise into her life. So it's just so important for us to notice, and that's sort of an overall big emotional response. But the reality is that every day little things happen. I know I'll be kind of going along in my day, and then all of a sudden I notice that I feel really sunk. And if I take 10 minutes or 5 minutes and I think, what happened that made me feel so sunk? An hour ago I was functioning fine, and now I feel awful. To take some time and notice what made us feel awful, then it's less likely that we're going to react to that feeling awful by eating sugar or skipping the gym, or or deciding we don't feel like juicing that afternoon, or walking that afternoon, or calling the doctor about what we need to call the doctor about, or whatever it is. That to really stay on top of the tough emotions that pop up off and on all day long makes an enormous difference in thinking clearly and enabling that rational mind to work well with that emotional mind when if we can keep that emotional mind thinking a little more clearly. So let's go on. Here we go. So again, why is nurturing your heart so important? So what nurturing your heart can do is, one, like I said, the most important thing is identifying when the elephant is leading the way. To notice that it's our emotions that are stopping us from going to the gym. It's not that the gym is too far away, or it's we may think, I just don't have time to start a new diet, or to make this diet, or it's too hard for me to limit my diet anymore, or to change how I eat. But that's really this emotional elephant getting in the way of our best thinking. And so when we can notice that, we have much more of a chance of working with the elephant to go in the direction that we want to. Also, then we can sometimes shift how our emotions are relating to all of this, and we can shift our emotional well-being and what emotions we're experiencing, and then that shifts the force of where the elephant is pushing us. It shifts the elephant's trajectory, and we can go, and the rider has a better chance of pulling the elephant down the path in the right direction. And last, nurturing your heart on a regular basis, really addressing those emotions on a regular basis, it saves a valuable, limited resource. Now, what is that valuable, limited resource? It's self-discipline. And I remember when I learned about this, it made such a big difference to me. So there's this great study that was done, and again, this was in that book, Switch, that I mentioned, by Dan and Chip Heath. And again, the book is called Switch. And they did an exercise where they had folks go into a room, and in front of them in the room was a plate of radishes and a plate of chocolate chip cookies. And with half of the participants, they said to them, absolutely do not eat those radishes, whatever you do, but you can have as many cookies as you want. And so those people sat there and they enjoyed the cookies, to whatever extent made sense for them. And then they went into another room and so they were given some other tasks. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. Then another group, you can guess, was sent into the room and said, okay, you absolutely don't eat the chocolate chip cookies, but you can have as many radishes as you want. And they had to sit there for about 20 minutes with no books, no music, just sitting there with these freshly baked chocolate chip cookies in front of them. And they were told, absolutely don't eat them, but you can have as many radishes as you want. And then they were sent into another room to do other tasks. Now, what the researchers found was in the next room, the different tasks that they had, they either had them do more self-discipline tasks, they had more cookies for them not to eat, or they had them do cognitive functioning tests. And in both situations, the people who had been told not to eat the radishes, in other words, the people who hadn't used up their self-discipline at all, because it doesn't really take any self-discipline not to eat radishes for most people, unless you're a rabbit, I guess. The people who hadn't used up their self-discipline did very well. They continued to, they were able to not eat the chocolate chip cookies in the next room, or if it was the cognitive test, they did very well on the cognitive tests. However, the people who had sat there for 20 minutes in an empty, blank, boring room with chocolate chip cookies in front of them, they all managed to not eat the chocolate chip cookies. That was fine. They all followed the rules and didn't eat them. But when they went into the next room, they were not able, they were much more likely to be not able to eat the next round of chocolate chip cookies. At this point, they just said, forget it, and they ate the chocolate chip cookies. And interestingly, they didn't score as high on the cognitive functioning tests. So it was this real revelation that actually self-discipline and self-control is kind of a muscle. And our brain and our mind, that rational mind, that rider controlling the elephant that wants the chocolate chip cookies, gets tired, and it actually gets tired to the extent that A, it affects our self-discipline. It gets harder and harder to use it. And B, it makes it harder for us to make good decisions. Cognitively, we get impacted as well. So we may think, I have a hard time sticking to this diet, or I have a hard time making myself call the doctor when I'm supposed to, or I have a hard time exercising when I think I need to. We may think that we're just weak or disorganized or whatever, but actually there's only so much pushing against a 6-ton elephant that we can do. The work that we need to do is get that elephant a little more on our side, or at least fighting us less hard, so that we don't use up so much of that self-control and self-discipline, so that the elephant and the mind are working together more. And that's really what today is about. It's about nurturing our heart so that our elephant is more on board and supporting the decisions that our rider is trying to make to get us to move forward towards a healthier life and figuring out what our right healing path is. So what we're going to do first is talk about a few different ways to identify and address tough emotions. And these are, if you guys are signed up for this course, then I know that you are people who are interested in personal growth, and you've probably done many of these things. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's group therapy, there are many other kinds of therapy, art therapy, dance therapy, water therapy. There's meditation, again, many kinds of meditation, prayer, yoga. There's all kinds of healing modalities like tapping or EFT. There's EMDR. These are all written in your workbook, by the way, on page 1. So you don't need to write them down. They're in your workbook. There's biofeedback, which I've been hearing great things about in the last couple of years. And then there's energy healing, like Reiki and craniosacral and other kinds of energy healing. So there's lots of different ways to identify and address tough emotions. But we're going to talk about a couple of very specific tools that don't cost any money that you can do on your own at home. But I just want you to take a moment, if it makes sense, to think about if any of those tools or things, biofeedback or EMDR or EFT, or, if there's any sort of emotional things going on for you that you've thought for a long time, that would be a useful thing for me to do. And just to note that, is there something that you'd like to try? Do you want to circle one or two of the tools above? And maybe not in the 6 weeks. Maybe you already have other things that you're focusing on in the 6 weeks. But just to note, this could be, the next thing that I want to try to address my emotions and help me really support my healing. So I just want to invite you to circle one or two of those, if that makes sense for you, to think about what you'd like to try. Now, the other piece of dealing with our emotions before we get into the two tools that we're going to talk about today is the importance of what I call reaching for the joy. Years ago, my husband and I used to say, we'd be sitting there and one of us would be kind of distracted. We'd say, what's going on, honey? What are you thinking about? And then the other one would say how they were thinking about something that was happening next week or next year or something in the future and stressing about how badly it might go. And we call that reaching for the anxiety. That you're like making up this story in your head, or I'm making up the story in my head about what might happen in the future, and it's affecting what's happening to me sitting right here, right now, when nothing bad has happened yet. And so we used to say, okay, instead of reaching for the anxiety, I'm going to reach for the joy. And the joy isn't in the future, the joy is right now. So another thing that makes an enormous difference in terms of keeping that elephant on our path is just feeding it lots of joy, making sure that we have as much joy as possible in our life. And I know that can be very, very difficult sometimes when there's a significant health condition going on, physically, financially, time-wise, emotionally. It can be very challenging to reach for the joy. But here's some ways that we can do that. Socializing with friends and meeting new people. And again, I know that some of these are more possible for some of us than others, depending on what our health levels. But, you can always sort of adapt these to your own abilities. Music, art, dance, and song, being outdoors, reading uplifting books, watching or listening to uplifting entertainment, hobbies, exercise, helping others, practicing gratitude. These are all things that we can do to reach for joy on a regular basis. I know for me, during these 5 weeks, in order to reduce my anxiety, I'm trying to do a lot more fun things. And so I actually went to a concert on Monday night, and I'm going to see a play tonight. Happily, both of those tickets were given to me by other people, so I really scored there. But anyway, there's lots of different things we can do. We can also just go out in the yard and sit and listen to the birds, or listen to music, or read a book, or watch a good movie, or talk to a friend on the phone. Those are all possible too. So I invite you to think for a moment and just circle this is on page 2 of your workbook, and circle 1 or 2 of those activities that maybe, it would be great to have a little more of in your life. And I also just want to mention that a good book to read about the first list of various modalities and tools there are to nurture our heart is a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's about dealing with trauma and the after effects of trauma, but the truth is we all have some level of trauma in our life, and it's really incredibly powerful. Great book. And then I want to recommend another book, and these are both written down in your workbook, The Joy Diet by Martha Beck. It's not about a diet about food. It's about 10 things you can do to just bring more joy into your life. And when I was depressed, when I was sick for 6 years, at some point back in 2006, I think it was, I read her book, and it just turned my life around. It was just immensely helpful. So those are 2 great reads. So let's see. So I'm inviting everybody to, just think about what are a couple of those reach for the joy activities that you would like to do. And these are some great pictures that Liz found for us. I love these pictures. One of them is somebody playing the guitar, and I'm constantly trying to get myself to relearn how to play guitar. So hopefully I'll be doing that again soon. Okay. Now, what I want to do is talk to you about, so those were a whole bunch of different things that we could do to help improve our emotional well-being. So for the rest of today, I want to focus really specifically on 2 tools that we can use to manage our emotions. Now, the thing about both of these tools is that they're free. They can be done in very short windows of time. They can be a daily practice that you use every single day to help keep your emotions on track. And they're tools that have been instrumental to mine and to other people's healing process. So those 2 tools are journaling and what I call listening partnerships. So let's get into both of them. And so we're going to talk about journaling first. So let's talk about the benefits of journaling. And when I'm talking about journaling, I'm not talking about sort of just writing down what we did today, although sometimes that can be useful too. But it's more about exploratory, introspective journaling where we ask ourselves questions and that sort of thing. So the benefits of journaling is, 1, it keeps our mind focused on a single issue, as opposed to sort of letting ourselves get distracted. It really keeps our mind, it can, if we choose to, stay focused on one issue and really think through it in a methodical way. It can allow for both linear logical thinking and also really kind of unconscious, stream of conscious, nonlinear associations that can be incredibly surprising and helpful sometimes. We can use journaling to explore decisions and pose all kinds of questions to ourselves. We can use journaling for storytelling that can help us make meaning of our experiences. And journaling has also been shown to contribute to increased resiliency and immune functioning, which I just think is incredibly cool. And when I first learned about this, I got so excited about it. So here's this quote from, here, I'll read the quote first, then I'll say who it's from. When people are given the opportunity to write about emotional upheavals, they often experience improved health. So this is specifically journaling to tell a story, to write about a traumatic event. They go to the doctor less, they have changes in immune functions, and if they're first-year college students, their grades tend to go up. So this is from Dr. James Pennebaker, the University of Texas at Austin. He's a national, international leader in writing therapy, and he did a couple of landmark studies where he, with mainly college students and recent graduates, and showed that their immune systems improved, their grades improved, their emotional well-being improved when they journaled regularly. And they chose people who had something difficult that had gone in their life in the last, as a child or in the last 10 years. And when they got to write about it repeatedly, their resiliency and their immune function and all these things improved. It was just, it's an incredible study to read. So I just want to put that out there, that whenever we're having a hard time or we're stuck, and earlier in a little pre-party and before we started at 2 o'clock, Bonnie mentioned that she had used journaling to really sort of clarify what was going on for her, and I do that all the time. It's so, so helpful. So there's lots of different journaling techniques. Let's just go over some of them real quick. So there's telling a story, exploring questions, focusing on the positive, and challenging negative beliefs. We're going to dive into each one. So first, journaling, using journaling to tell a story. Now, what's great about this is that you can work through a whole narrative. You can really follow a story from beginning to end. And by doing that, if you decide, okay, I'm going to write out everything that happened about this thing that was very upsetting to me, either something that happened 30 years ago or something that happened this week or something that happened this morning, you'll uncover new perspectives. The way that you're seeing things, the way other people might see things, you'll notice things you didn't notice before. It lets your emotions out. Like I often start crying when I'm journaling, or laughing, or, it can really uncork things that are stuck. And you can notice the full impact of, oh my gosh, this really is a big deal when you sort of see it in black and white. So telling a story in your journaling can be really powerful. The second technique was writing questions down. Now, I'm not going to read all these questions because they're actually all listed on page 3 and 4 of your workbook. But there's so many different, you can just take with your right hand. And sometimes some people recommend writing with your left hand sometimes because they say it, or your non-dominant hand, I should say, because they say it sort of opens up the stream of consciousness. But you can write a question like, what am I feeling right now? Or what am I doing that would best be stopped and why? Or how am I benefiting from my current choices? And just set a timer and just start writing. And don't let yourself stop writing for 5 minutes or 2 minutes and see what comes up. And when I've done this exercise of just writing a question down and then just answering it and not letting myself stop writing for a few minutes, I've been amazed at some of the answers that have come up just sort of out of my subconscious. So this is a really powerful technique, is asking yourself probing questions and then answering them. Another great thing to use our journaling for is focusing on the positive, right? We all know, I think, about gratitude journals and how getting into the practice of, listing 5 things every day that we're grateful for and trying to find different things every day, especially if we're not feeling well or we're really having a difficult time with our body or our emotions, to really work to find those 5 things and hold them in our mind for 30 seconds each and really appreciate those things. It just shifts. It can shift our whole perspective, make an enormous difference. So gratitudes and appreciations or also using affirmations, which is sort of, taking something that maybe you don't quite believe in, but saying it over and over and over again to help you believe in it. So for me, one of my affirmations was, I live joyfully. I used to say that, I don't know, like 100 times a day. I'd say it like 20 times in the morning, 20 times in the afternoon, 20 times in the evening, and 20 times before I went to bed when I was sick. And I was not living joyfully at all, let me tell you. I was a little tough to be around sometimes back then. And that was an affirmation that I used a lot back then. And also writing affirmations into your journal, repeating them. I still do that. I choose a positive affirmation every morning and I write it 10 times in my journal. So that's another, focusing on the positive. And then the last little journaling technique that I want to mention is challenging negative beliefs. And this is Martha Beck in that book, The Joy Diet, that I mentioned earlier. She calls this flipping. And basically, you take a negative message that you're saying to yourself in your head, here's an example of a negative message. I'm so burnt out and disheartened that I can just never find my path to wellness and get any healthier. And even though we don't believe it, we just flip that to a positive message, the exact opposite of what we just wrote. And we write down, I'm so motivated and powerful that I'm well on my way to finding my path to my best health. And we write down that positive message that maybe we don't believe, but we write it down 3, 4, 5, 10, as many times as you can get yourself to write it, maybe up to 10 times, at least maybe 3 or 4. And then notice which parts of that can you believe. And so for me, these were some of the messages I used back when I was really sick. I noticed, okay, I am motivated and I have succeeded at some things in my life, so I do have power. So if I'm motivated and I do have some power, maybe I'm a little bit on my way to finding my path to my best health. And by taking those negative messages and just turning them on their head and then trying to see, okay, which parts of this positive message can I believe a little bit, it helps us move towards that more positive thinking. And again, I know you've all heard me say this before. I'm not someone who says that, positive thinking can totally heal us and that's all we need. But shifting our thinking from negative to positive thinking can enable us to do the hard work that we need to do to get healthier. And those negative thoughts, as we're going to talk about in a minute, I'm not into just shifting them to positive thoughts. We need to let them out sometimes. We need to address them and be honest about those hard feelings that we're feeling, and then figure out how to harness them into more positive emotions also. So I'm not either about saying positive thoughts can just make everything all better, or that we should ignore the negative thoughts, but we do want to figure out ways to really be able to experience that positivity more in our lives, right? So now I want to invite you to take a few moments, and let me see how we're doing on time. Great. So we're going to take about 5 minutes, and I want to invite you to explore you and journaling. And this exercise is on page 4 in your workbook. And you've got these 5 questions here about how journaling might benefit you. When could you do it? In case it doesn't actually say here, when could I journal? But I also invite you, if you're interested in doing it, to think about, okay, when is a time during the day that I could regularly journal? And I'll tell you that for me, I have a whole system now where I have my guided meditation, my journal, my prayer book, my supplements, and my water bottle right next to my bed, because I have a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. A really hard time. So I just stay in bed for the first 40 minutes of every day, and I do my guided meditation. I journal for 10 minutes. I do prayers for 5 or 10 minutes, and I drink a full bottle of water and supplements. And by the time I finish doing all of those things, I feel physically and emotionally ready to get out of bed and face the day, and I'm raring to go. So for me, journaling for early in the morning for 10 minutes is a huge, huge help, but it's different for everybody. So I'm going to be quiet for about 4 or 5 minutes and let you do this exercise. And then when you're done, please type done. And if you're willing to share, type share, and I'll call on you, and we'll have some time for folks to share their thoughts about journaling or ask any questions or add their perspectives or their experiences. I would love to hear from everybody. Okay, so I will be quiet for a little bit now so you can do this exercise. Great. I see a couple people are done and willing to share. That's wonderful. I'm just going to give another minute for folks to keep writing and let more people finish before we start sharing, but that's great. So, and when you do finish or when you have something you're willing to share, please let me know. Thanks. Okay, great. So let's see. Let's give Marion. I'm going to, I've got to find you on the little list here, and let me unmute you. And if you can remind us where you're calling in from, Marion.
Hi, I'm calling in from.
Can you, let's see, you should be unmuted, Marion. I wonder if maybe you muted your own phone or your own microphone. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I see you raised your hand.
Okay.
On the computer. I wonder why I can't hear you. Oh no, that's too bad. I'll come back to you in a minute. Krista, let's try you. Hi, Krista.
Hi. Yes, I'm a big journaler and have been for years.
Krista?
And yes, I'm talking.
Oh wait, let me fix something here. Let's see. Let me unmute all and see if that helps.
Oh.
Let's see.
Hello.
Krista, are you trying to talk? Let me see if I can. Oh, Deborah,
yes.
You said you can hear people, but I can't hear them.
Yes.
So let's see. Krista, you're speaking.
I was speaking,
and Krista, but I can't hear her.
Right.
That's less than ideal. Hold on for just 1 second.
Muted. Unmuted.
Okay, Krista.
Yes.
Oh, now I can hear. I am so sorry about all that. I don't sometimes GoToWebinar gives us a little bit of a hiccup, but now I can hear you. So Krista, why don't you go ahead and then we'll go back to Marion. I'd love to hear.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been a big journaler for years, and at one time I had a trunk that was full of 20 years worth of journals.
Wow.
And so I'm a big believer in it, but I have noticed over like probably the last year or so, I'm not as consistent as I used to be, and I'm really glad you brought this up, because as I was answering these questions, I realized what the problem is I used to have one journal, and I put everything, no matter what part of my life it was about, and because I'm doing different things, I've started different journals, and it's too confusing. You know, I have a health journal, different places, and it's like, no, I need to go back to having one journal that I use every day and just keep everything there. So that's what I'm going to do. That's why I'm not doing it as consistently, as I'm too spread out. I'm too unfocused.
Well, I'm so glad you got a chance to think about that and notice, right? Because sometimes there's just little things that are getting in our way that are making it too hard. So that's great.
Exactly.
Well, I'm excited.
So thank you.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, Marion, I'm going to go back to you now. And you should be unmuted. Wait. Whoops.
Okay.
Yep, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So go ahead. What did you want to share?
I wanted to share that I feel like I need to expand my definition of journaling and include speaking in that, so that Sometimes I can combine my journaling with my affirmations, and just even talk out some of my thoughts, um, to nobody in particular, because sometimes it's as helpful as writing them down. And the other thing is, because I hoard things, and my space is disorganized, that first and foremost, I really need to find the space and place to, as you described, have all of the things like there and ready, so that when I sit down to do this, whether it's writing or speaking, I just start. I don't have to begin by gathering. Everything's all there.
Right, right. And I know, and for me now, it's just been 5 days, but it's been really great. The last 5 days, before I take about 3 minutes before I go to bed every night, and I put my supplements in a little thing, and I fill my water bottle, and I make sure my computer is under my bed that's where my guided meditation is, and I make sure my journal and my pen and my prayer book are all next to my bed. So it's sometimes it's sort of in advance of when you're going to want them, just sort of making sure, taking a few minutes to make sure that it's there.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that makes a big difference, definitely. And thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And also, I just want to say, I noticed that now that I'm looking, you didn't write can share. You just wrote done, and then I called on you. So I hope I didn't put you on the spot.
That's okay. At least I had something written down.
Okay, well, if you ever don't want to share and I unmute you and call on you, feel free to say, no, Jeanette, that wasn't my intention.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Marion. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to mute Marion, and there we go back. Everybody's muted. You should just be able to hear me. Thanks very much to Marion and Krista for sharing. So that's journaling, and that's one tool that you can do at any time, anywhere. I just really recommend it a lot, and I hope everybody got to think about that a little bit. And what I want to move on to next is tool number 2, listening partnerships. So what this really is a type of peer counseling, and I'm part of a community that's been doing this for years and years and years. So I have lots of different listening partners that I work with. And what you do is you set aside, 2 people take turns listening to each other for a set period of time. And we use these to explore current challenges, to celebrate successes, to release emotional tension, and to improve our ability to think and to act clearly. Again, it's really about sort of clarifying, okay, what's the rider thinking? What's the elephant doing? What's my most clear course of action right now that isn't clouded by emotions? And you have a lot of notes on this in your workbook, starting on page 6. And there's also 12 pages on the listening partnerships in my book, Everyday Healing, where you can read that also for more information. But let's go over them a little bit. So, and before I even start, I just want to say a little bit more about why they're so valuable. We've talked about how working on health issues can just bring up a huge number of tough emotions. And you know what I want to do before I get into this? I just want to say that at the end of this, I'm going to ask for one volunteer to be willing to do a little demonstration of a listening partnership. I'll listen and you talk for just 3 or 4 minutes. And you get to talk about whatever is challenging for you right now. And I'll just be mainly listening to you. So if folks want to think about who would like to volunteer, that would be great. And if you do want to volunteer, just type into the question area, I'll volunteer. Okay, and then I'll see that. So as we've talked about, working on health issues can bring up just a huge number of tough emotions. It can kick up all kinds of feelings like disappointment, helplessness, discouragement, and these really can affect our decision making without us even realizing it. And then there's also just some chronic level of feelings that we walk around with every day that we don't even necessarily notice, some level of worry or anxiety or fears. So listening partnerships give us a place to notice these emotions on a regular basis, let them out, and then explore what's causing them, and think through how we want to address these emotions and how we want to address our health challenge in a really supportive, loving environment. Now, for me, I know that I could not have there's just no way I could have made the decision that I did to change my lifestyle and totally prioritize my healing without the support of regular listening sessions with my listening partners. during my illness and actually still today, I had a 5-minute each way mini. So I would listen and they would talk, then they would listen and I would talk at least every afternoon and morning, at least twice a day by phone. And then I would do at least once a week, 45 minutes each session, a listening partnership at home with a friend. And it would help me and my partner, my partners who I did these with. It would help us clear our heads, feel connected to each other and ourselves, feel less isolated and more confident to face challenges, and just more able to, like I said, make decisions and follow through. And the release that can really come from the talking, the laughing, the crying that I did with those friends and their full confidence in me, and the clear thinking that I did after those sessions was really what made it possible for me to believe in my own healing and make the changes necessary to make it happen. And I know a lot of people who have used these to help them move through illness. And one of the strongest examples was one of my teachers, one of the people who taught me these listening partnerships. She had a huge range of health issues. And one of them was she had kidney failure when I think she was just 47 when she had kidney failure. And the doctors said that she was going to die within a few months, and she probably wouldn't even have time, that dialysis might not even work. She might not even have time to get a transplant, and she wasn't a good candidate for a transplant because the kidney failure was so severe and it had already affected some of her other organs, and basically she needed to prepare herself to die. And she did every single day during the first, 6 months from the time that she had really serious kidney failure. She did listening partnerships, mainly one-way time. She was really involved in one of these peer counseling communities. So she had people coming and giving her one-way time. But then when she was able to, she would also give them attention back and listen to them back. And long story short, she ended up being able to be on dialysis for about a year, get a kidney transplant, and live for many years after that. And then at some point, because of the immune suppressants for the kidney transplant, she got cancer, 2 different kinds of cancer. Again, they said you're going to die within a few months, and she ended up living for a bunch more years. So she lived for either 13 or 14 years after her initial kidney failure. And all throughout it, she was doing these listening partnerships on a regular basis, and they helped her make good decisions. They helped her manage her pain and heal more quickly. And I was in hospitals often with her at different times. And I heard so many doctors express surprise over and over again at how quickly she recovered after procedures or surgeries, or how clear thinking she was in difficult situations, and how little pain medicine she needed, and how she was able to stay present even in life-threatening situations. And it was really because I saw her on a regular basis dealing with the tough emotions that came up, so that when she was challenged and she needed to think clearly, she really had her whole mind to think clearly with. So I just can't recommend this mode of dealing with tough emotions enough. Like I said, there's 12 whole pages about it in my book. And if people are more interested in it, I'm happy you can email me and we can talk about it by email. And I'm happy to help you figure out how to do these in your accountability partnerships or teach them to other people, because it's just such a powerful tool. So let's get a little bit into how these are different. Loving chats with your friends and family are great things, and sometimes they're a really important part of your social support, and sometimes they can really be healing in deep ways. But these listening partnerships are different from our everyday conversations in a number of ways. So here are the main ways. The first, and these are listed on page 6 under suggested guidelines for your listening partnerships in your workbook. The first is that each partner gets equal time to address their challenges. So it could be 3 minutes each, or it could be 50 minutes each, but you set a timer and each person gets equal time. The second is that there's an agreed upon structure for the interaction. You start off by saying something new and good, a recent positive thing that's happened, to just notice that there are good things in the world if you're having a hard time that day, or just to really put your mind on a positive event. And then you review the current challenges or any upsetting situations. And then you focus in on the main issue, the main sort of block or difficulty that you're having. And then after you've worked on that for a while, then you return your attention to something positive or neutral at the end. And again, in everyday healing, there's all kinds of examples of how you can return your attention to something more positive or neutral at the end. And you can do all of that in 3 minutes, or you can do it all in 50 minutes and go over lots of different topics. The third way that this is really different from a regular conversation is that the listener is totally committed to always maintaining a strong confidence in the ability of the speaker to overcome her challenges. So often what happens is I know this happens to cancer patients a lot, they may sort of be afraid of dying, and there's literally nobody in their family that they can talk to about being afraid of dying, because if they start expressing their fear, the person who's listening will get so worried about them, and then the person who's listening gets scared themselves. And what we want to do is just really maintain full confidence that the person who's speaking, that they can handle the challenge they're talking about. Yes, they're afraid of dying, but they can handle this fear. They can get the support they need to move forward with whatever's coming. And so it's not that we don't look concerned. We can look concerned and caring for the person, but you don't want to be like, oh my God, that's awful. How are you going to deal with that? You want to maintain a strong confidence in the ability of the speaker to overcome her challenges. And then the person, sometimes if they're feeling afraid that they don't have that confidence, then they can sort of borrow that confidence from the person who's listening to them. The fourth thing is that the focus really stays on the person who's speaking, and that means that we avoid asking questions to satisfy our own curiosity. We resist the urge to share our own stories and experiences, and we temper our own emotional reactions, so we don't sort of take attention back to ourselves. And then the fifth way it's different is that the listener doesn't offer any advice or judgment, but just asks open-ended questions. And by open-ended questions, that's like, tell me more. How does that feel? Do you want to say anything else about that? How would it feel if you did X? What is it like when you do Y? Just sort of questions to get people to talk more. And I don't mean to say that advice is always a bad thing, especially with our friends and family. Sometimes advice is life-saving. But in this particular tool, we're really trying to focus on letting the speaker notice what's going on for themselves and use their own mind to think about themselves. So that's why we don't offer advice or judgment when we're using this tool. Number 6 is that the speaker is guaranteed total confidentiality. So that means that not only do you not tell other people what the speaker said, but if you happen to have a relationship with this person that you're doing a little listening partnership with outside of this, and you run into them in the grocery store, you don't say to them, hey, what's going on with that horrible thing that you told me about with your mom last week? They might not want to talk about that in the grocery store right then, right? So confidentiality is both, it means we don't talk to other people about it, and we also don't raise it to that person again unless we ask them. And we say, hey, you mentioned something about your mom in our conversation, our listening partnership last week. Can I ask you about it? And they might say, I don't feel like talking about that right now. And then the 7th way that's a little different from your regular average conversations is that venting feelings through laughing or crying is really encouraged. Often in normal life, if someone starts crying during a conversation, the initial instinct is to pat them on the back and say, it's okay. You want to comfort them and get them to stop crying. But the reality is that crying or laughing really hard are really healing things. They're healing for our body. They're healing for our mind. We've all had a good cry where afterwards we felt better, right? So actually, in listening partnerships, to get to the point where you can cry about something and let yourself cry as long as you can, or laugh really hard about something, is fantastic. It's so healing, and it really frees up your mind to think better. So those are some of the guidelines for listening partnership. And then the one really sort of secret sauce for a listening partnership is this great question to ask at some point for the listener to ask the speaker, which is simply, what were your early experiences with blank, with X? And what I mean is, this is where X is any topic or experience that the speaker is dealing with. So for example, like an illness, an injury or pain, doctors, if the person is talking about how they have a doctor's appointment that they need to make, and they really don't want to make the appointment, and they don't know why they haven't called yet, but they know they need to, then the question is, what were your early experiences with doctors? And just by way of example, one of my clients who I work with now has been for when we first started working together, she was trying to shift to an earlier bedtime, and she hated going to bed. And so I just said, what was your early experiences with, bedtime and sleeping? And it turned out that she had had terrible stomach pain attacks in the middle of the night, and her parents stopped attending to her after some point because they wanted to sleep. And she spent hours and hours every night of her childhood in a bathroom by herself in terrible pain. And it's sort of there's no surprise that she doesn't want to go to sleep at night. And that helped shift for her an understanding that she needed to sort of parent that child and work on those emotions to feel less scared of going to sleep at night. So this is a great question to ask. What were your early experiences with X? So what I'd like to do now is to invite, let's see, I'm going to go to my little questions area here and see if we have a volunteer. Is anyone willing to be a volunteer? And all you need to do, I will simply ask you the question of, is there anything that's getting in the way of, what's something you'd like to be doing for your healing, and what's getting in the way of that right now? So what's something that you'd like to do for your healing, and what's getting in the way of that right now? And then you can just talk for 3 minutes. And I might ask a little question here or there, but it's just a real simple demonstration on the phone online right now. And so far, nobody has volunteered. That is so unusual. You guys are a very volunteer-y type of bunch. Remember, you don't have to ask any specific questions or perform in any way. It's really just sharing. And what I do when I do book talks when nobody volunteers, which has happened 2 or 3 times in my life, is I just do it myself. Oh, here we go. Bonnie, you're a good sport. Thank you, Bonnie. I'm going to unmute you. There you go. Bonnie, let's see.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, and I can hear you too. Thank you so much for volunteering.
Oh, do I go?
No, I was just going to say, so thank you for volunteering, and I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. And again, the question is just, what's something you'd like to be doing for your healing? And what do you feel like is hard for you about that? And you just go ahead.
Okay. What something I want to do for my healing is actually to meditate, reflect, and journal. And the thing that I'm having a hard time with is actually prioritizing my health and putting it into my calendar. Mm-hmm. And journaling, I've done it before, and it is very healing in the way that I can vent and purge and get the negative feelings out so that I have more room for positive feelings and thoughts. Mm-hmm. And that's been very helpful, and I'd like to continue doing that. But what, again, gets in the way is me saying, yes, that's important to do. Other things keep getting in the way, like, oh, I have to go here, oh, I've got to go by that place and pick that up. And I feel very unorganized during the day because I'm just jumping and going. Mm-hmm. And then I get anxiety about even starting my day because I've got these little notes everywhere of things I've got to do. Mm-hmm. So that's what's really getting in my way, and I sure would like to do something about it, but just the thought, do it, self-discipline, is kind of harsh to me.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I find myself resisting that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So has it been 3 minutes yet?
No, you still have 1 minute and 15 seconds left. You're doing great. And let me just ask, what's your experience been in the past, either recently or a long time ago, with having plans of things that you want yourself to do and doing them? What can you think of any successes or challenges in the past?
Yes, my successes have been to actually, I've taken a class on memoir writing, and that was very healing for me, and I was able to get out a lot, and I was able to find myself journaling in a real good way as far as organizing my thoughts around the trauma and actually getting them into words was very healing. So that was a success. And the challenge is I don't seem to do it without like a group of people. There's an energy that is actually that I feel around a group of people. It's all sitting there and okay, go and do this. And I find myself really fizzling out when it's just me.
So that was time. But another question that I would ask then, and this is just for you to sort of think about going forward, is, what were your experiences with, to what extent did you get support to do things with other people when you were young, and to what extent were you kind of left alone to do things when you were young? Because a lot of us who were left alone to get stuff done when we were little, like maybe didn't get so much support around hard things, it feels very hard to do anything alone.
Yeah.
And it can feel harder than it actually is. And sort of working on those emotions and noticing that you can be motivated yourself, you can do things just for yourself, can make a big difference. So that's just a question I want to invite you to explore, is what was it like for you around getting help to do things or doing things with other people or being isolated when you were young?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Sure. Okay, so we just have a few minutes left. First of all, Bonnie, thank you so much. I'll ask you before I go to other folks, how was that for you? Thank you for doing that, and how was that experience for you?
Well, I really liked it as far as being able, again, to get some of my thoughts into words. It helps me kind of, instead of the little things floating around like my notes, it helps me focus on, what I'm really trying to say and get those thoughts in a cohesive verbal, sentence.
Right, that's one of the best things about a listening partnership, is that it lets us really kind of organize our mind a little bit and have somebody else witness it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your being game to do it. So we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to go a few minutes over, just so that everyone can have a little bit of time to do this next exercise, you and listening partnerships, on page 8. And let's just take a few minutes. If you need to get off at 3, then finish up and hop off. But what we're going to do now is take a few minutes to do this, you and listening partnerships. And then we're going to do a few minutes to choose your actions for the next week. And then around 3:12 or so, 3:10 or 3:12, we will do open Q&A for about 20 minutes. Okay, so that's what's going to be happening in the next period. And I encourage everyone to stay on for as long as you can. If you need to hop off, I understand. So I'm going to be quiet for about 3 minutes now and let you do this you and listening partnerships exercise around how might doing regular listening partnerships benefit you, and if you have any resistance to doing them, and who could you maybe ask in your life to do this with you. And I'll be quiet while you do this. And when you finish, if you can type done, and if you're willing to share, type share. Thanks. Okay, we'll just go for another minute or so. And like I said, if you're done, type done. And if you're willing to share any thoughts that you have about listening partnerships or about how you might do them in your life or what your resistance is to them or what attracts you to them or anything, I'd love to hear. So if you can type done, we'll share. That would be great. Let's see, Marion. Here, I'm going to unmute you. There we go. Hi, Marion.
Hi.
Oh,
And I volunteered.
great.
So I had the benefit of taking your previous webinar, and this was really a revelation for me. And one of the things that I have found that I didn't even think about actually was that partnering with others relieves the burden off my wife Lisa, so that she can support me in other ways that are equally important and doesn't have to feel that she's the only one I'm talking to.
Right. Such a good point. Right.
Right, and so it does actually benefit me as well as Lisa. And the other thing is it really reduces my isolation by inviting others into my world. And even though I feel a lot of anxiety and worry and shame about some things, what has tended to happen is that it's opened me up to receive the goodness of others in ways that I hadn't before.
That's beautiful.
So my dread and fear of losing a friend or a relationship or alienating people it still exist. But if I can just even think of, one topic and even start talking about it out loud or journaling about it a little bit first and then contact somebody, I actually haven't ever had anybody say no.
And will they share also? Will you do like a back and forth?
With some, I do. I have one listening partner that doesn't share back with me, and that's okay. She shares back about other things.
Right.
She doesn't like the structure, but she is absolutely a fabulous listening partner for me.
That's great. Yeah, no, whatever works, but just to have more outlets, it's so true. And to be able to talk when things are really hard, and we've talked a bunch about shame, there's so many different kinds of shame we can have, and that's such a big block for a lot of us. And to be talking to other people about it just cuts that so much, and it cuts the isolation and really helps us move forward in big ways. That's huge. It's great to hear, Marion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Jeanette. Hi, everybody.
Great to hear from you today. So you said that you were willing to share your thoughts about this?
Yes. I love my accountability partnership with Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
We matched this up in the group we did in the spring. We have met every single Monday since then.
So great.
And what my obstacle is the last question: with whom in my life might I do this? And I feel afraid to ask anybody else because I'm afraid that they'll say no and they'll reject me and I'll feel terrible. And so right now, listening to Marion, I feel like I just want to ask one person that I think won't reject the idea. But that's the fear.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think, it's also good to hear what Marion said about, one of the people that she talks to doesn't like this structure of, 5 minutes for me, 5 minutes for you. And so they do it differently, and there probably, I can tell you that I have tried to teach this method to many, many, many people in my life. And
Yeah.
and a lot of it, the result is that I can do this with my sisters-in-law, I can do it with a lot of my friends, and some of the people have said, like, this is totally weird, and no, I don't want to do this with you. But it didn't affect our friendship, because I just gently said, hey, there's this new thing, there's this way that I'm doing, thinking about my health and my well-being, and would you be willing to look at this little 3-page description of it and try it with me? And they either say no or they say yes, and and so I guess one thing to notice is maybe to journal about, like, what's the worst case scenario if they say no.
Yeah, I could journal that. Even just the way you're saying it, that I could say to a friend, hey, this is something I learned about. And I think you and I've thought of you as someone to do this with, and I'm wondering if you'd like to learn more about it and think about doing it with me. Because then I'm not putting so much emphasis on how much I need. I'm just being more relaxed about inviting them.
Right, and I think the first invitation is really not to sort of like, do you want to be listening partners, like some long-term relationship, but hey, do you want to try this thing I learned once?
Yeah, that's
You know?
a really, yeah. Do you want to try this thing I learned once?
And then, and then maybe a week later say, did you like it when we did that? Would you like to, do you want to call each other every now and then when we want to do a mini, or do you want to maybe like try to do it once a week? And I have friends who don't want to do it with me once a week, but they are happy to then text me, or I text them every now and then, say, can we grab 5 minutes right now? And we do 5 minutes each. I have friends who only want to schedule it. I have friends who like longer ones. I have people who like shorter ones. And I have people who don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. So.
Okay, that's.
Okay, my speakers just went out. I can't hear Julie. Oh no. Okay, but I think, Julie, what you were saying was that sounds good, or something along those lines. That's what I'm going to hope. I apologize. I'm going to fix my speakers for a second. Whoops. Oh, there we go. I see what happened. Okay, Julie, did you want to say any last thing? You're unmuted.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that I said I wanted to share, because I'm feeling more relaxed about the idea of asking somebody.
That's great. That's great. And
not making it into this momentous thing.
Right. It's a 15-minute thing on the phone. You want to, or in person, or whatever.
If they say no, it's just, well, I don't really like doing things like that, or that's not my.
Yeah, it's not personal.
Whatever. It doesn't mean I reject you.
Right, exactly. So, and yes, I have many people who have rejected doing this with me, who I'm still close friends with.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you for sharing, Julie. Okay, so that sort of turned into a little bit of question and answer time, which is great. That's, so I appreciate everybody being sort of flexible with how we're using the time today. Let me just move on to, so this is the last little quote I wanted for today, was have a great week. But now we're going to move into choosing our actions. Sorry, this is a little bit disorganized, but one thing I just wanted us to read this quote together, where it says, never apologize for being sensitive or emotional. Let this be a sign that you've got a big heart and aren't afraid to let others see it. Showing your emotions is a sign of strength. And now, showing our emotions in sort of unaware ways and freaking out at people, or, that's not necessarily a sign of strength, but saying, I'm feeling this right now, I need a minute, or this is really hard for me to do because of XYZ, or these listening partnerships are helpful for me because I think it might be helpful for you, because the reality is we all have tough emotions. Just acknowledging that we have feelings and that they impact us is something that if everybody did in the world, we would all be much better off. So I want to we all get to acknowledge that we're emotional, sensitive beings, and that that's a sign of strength. So now I want us to take a little bit of time before we get off the phone, because I know everyone has said that this makes a big difference in these courses, to be able to do this before we get off our computers and phones, to choose some actions for this week. And this might not be all of your commitments, but some of your commitments for this week. And some possible actions are doing your accountability partnership. I encourage everybody to keep doing those. Trying out a listening partnership, maybe taking the time in your accountability partnership or inviting somebody else to do it with you. Maybe try journaling. Maybe try something to bring you joy, or another modality to address tough emotions. I also just want to remind everybody that when I mention all these different things, reaching for the joy, tapping, EMDR, EFT, biofeedback, these are all, they're not, do not take these as a to-do list. This is a huge menu of possibilities, and I encourage you to just pick the very, very few that you want to focus on that work for you. And stay focused on moving yourself towards your 5-week goals, and don't get too overwhelmed by all the different things I'm talking about. I just mentioned all these various different things because different things work for different people, and so I want everyone to have a big menu to choose from. So let's choose our actions this week. Step 1 is choose a 1-week mini goal for your week. And this is on page 9, I think, of your workbook. Choose a 1-week mini goal for the coming week for our next session, based on something that will move you towards one of your 5-week goals. And then choose a bunch of, maybe even just 2 or 3 doable actions. If you had a hard time getting done what you were doing last week, then just choose 2 or 3 doable actions for your goal this week. Estimate how long each one of those will take, including prep and cleanup time, and then figure out when you're going to do it. And you can fill out the little chart on, here's a sample chart, and you have this on page 9, where my actions, these were my actions from last week: emailing a friend about dancing, it would take me 10 minutes, when, on Thursday, etc. And then you have your plan on page 10 of your workbook. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes and invite you to write down what actions you want to do this week, how long you think they'll take, and when you want to do them. And if you could do 2 things for me, if you have a question you want to ask during the Q&A, write that down into your questions. If you're done writing your actions down, write that. So you can either write done or I have a question. And that way I'll know how many people that have questions and how to deal with the time. Okay, I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes while we all choose our actions for the coming week. Okay, so it seems like a bunch of people are done with choosing their actions. That's great. And we have 10 minutes left. So I just want to invite people to, if you have any questions that you want to type in, questions about this program, about listening partnerships and how they work, about different things you can do in listening partnerships, about how to invite people to do listening partnerships with you, about journaling, about setting up routines, anything you want to know about me, my life, my personal life. I love talking about myself. I'm happy to answer personal questions. My healing process. I would be happy to answer anything. So I'm just going to wait a few more minutes and see if anybody types any questions in. Okay, Bonnie has a question. Bonnie, I think you're unmuted.
Yes, I am.
Okay, hi, go ahead.
Hi. What I want to know is, how do you stay motivated and encouraged? I seem to find myself wearing down very easily as far as looking at these as tasks that I have to do. And it's just a mindset. These are things I want to do, but I kind of get in that mindset, and I'm wondering, how do you stay motivated and encouraged to do these things?
Right. Well, one of the things that I do is I've set myself up as a leader on this, and so I have to do it, or else I'm not. Like, I'm leading these groups, and I have to. I mean, honestly, I'm such an accountability person. I really function well when I have a lot of accountability. So when I say to all of you, I'm going to try to set up my morning routine better, it has a huge impact on me, and it really gets me to do my morning routine. So in all honesty, part of it for me is accountability, is telling people that I'm doing something, and then it gets me to do it. But a big piece of it also, I mean, there's two things, I think. There's three things. One is accountability, letting people know that you're doing it. Two is trying things over and over and over again and not giving up. I mean, having like a morning routine that includes meditation and journaling and prayer, and where I don't wake up sort of stressed out and unhappy, because I just, my whole life I've had a hard time in the morning except for brief periods. And having a morning routine that works has been something I've been trying to do for years. And I feel like just in the last few months, I've been getting a much better handle on it. And even in the last few months, I've tweaked it several times. I would get it going for a week or two, and then it would fall apart, and then I would change it a little bit, and then it would work better. So a piece of it is recognizing that because something doesn't work today doesn't mean it's not going to work tomorrow. And, so that's one piece, is sort of not, is just trying things again. And staying motivated and encouraged. I mean, honestly, I think the bottom line for me is that's why this nurture your heart piece is so important, that I can't do this work when I'm not doing, for me, and everybody's different, if I'm not doing listening partnerships at least 1 or 2 a day and journaling at least a few times a week, I don't get my stuff done. I get depressed, I get anxious, I eat sugar, I don't exercise. I have to be I have to be ahead of the tough emotions. I have to have regular outlets, journaling, prayer, meditation, listening partnerships throughout my day, where I can keep dealing with the tough emotions that come up, or else they get the better of me, and the elephant takes off down the path, and I'm not in good shape. So I really think that for me, a big piece of it is to have all those things in place, kind of prophylactically, to have those things in place, and doing them with other people. That's one of the benefits of a listening partnership, is that, like you're saying, well, it's hard to motivate myself to even do these things. In a listening partnership, you're doing it with another person, or accountability partnership, you're doing it with another person. Or even journaling, you could maybe say, like, let's say that we're both going to journal at 8 o'clock tonight. Those can make a big difference. And then the other thing is, I get motivated by seeing my numbers increase or decrease. I love my little charts where I see that my anxiety level is going down, or my pain level is going down, or I see that it's not, and then I have to try something new, and that motivates me to try something new. So that was a lot of answers to your question, but those are some ways that I stay motivated and encouraged. Does any of that, any of those different things I said, do any of them kind of resonate for you?
Yes, I've taken lots of notes and bullet notes, and I appreciate that. Yes, it's helped.
Okay, great, good. Well, thanks for asking, Bonnie. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah.
It's a good question. Okay, Bill, you have a question. Oops, there we go. You should be unmuted. Nope, wait 1 second.
Yeah, I used to journal years ago when that was the genesis of my book.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't journaled in years, and the thing is, I'm left-handed, and when I write with my left hand, I have to really concentrate because my penmanship hasn't been good recently, and I get ink all over my hands. So for me, it's kind of easier to just do it on a computer and save it, and then it's clean, and it doesn't add to clutter in my apartment and whatever. So I just don't know if anybody ever journals on their computer and saves it or not.
Oh, absolutely. I have, I go back and forth between the two. For me, I tend to prefer journaling in pen and paper, but absolutely, I think a computer journal is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, if that's what is comfortable for you and what you're more like, I mean, the most important thing is what are you likely to do? What are you more drawn to?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's brilliant.
Thanks, Jeanette.
And do you want to say the name of your book? As an author, I always want to encourage people to plug their book, or just you tell folks. Yeah, go ahead.
The title of the book is When I Go Home. The subtitle is An Alzheimer's Caregiver Story of Love by Bill Galea. It's available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, and I think I did send you a copy
Yeah.
So hopefully, if you haven't read it yet, you'll get a chance to read it someday. But it got a 5-star review on Pacific Book Review recently, so I'm trying to promote it with that too.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I know exactly what the name of your book is. I was asking you to share it with everybody else. No, I've read big parts of it, and it's very moving. And Bill really has a beautiful story of how he was very committed to his mother and their close relationship, and how he was her caregiver. And for any of us who have ailing parents in any way, it's really a moving story. So yeah, it's always good to share the work that we all do.
Well, thank you for letting me share that, Jeanette.
Sure, of course, Bill. Thanks for writing it.
No, thank you.
Okay, at the moment I don't see any other questions. Does anybody else? We have a few more minutes until 3:30. Here we go. Let's see. Diane, it looks like maybe you have a question. I'm not sure. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi.
Hi, Diane.
You can hear me? Hi.
Yes.
I'm sorry I missed some of today. Had an appointment ran late, but I wanted to ask, I find that one of the things that trips me up on a regular basis that I'd really like to attack, and wonder if you have suggestions or anyone else has stuff, that I find that because I'm hypoglycemic and have hypothyroid and food allergies, and I'm trying to create a way of eating that's anti-inflammatory, low glycemic, can really be a restorative health path for me is what I'm eating and how I'm eating. And I find that there's so much planning that's necessary and so much organizing and planning food prep, menu planning, going to the store, how often, and cooking for one, cooking in a way that a certain amount goes in the fridge, a certain amount goes in the freezers, labels, how to keep your food from spoiling. It just seems like this enormous task, and planning isn't a strong suit. And I would really love to wrangle this thing down to also support to get help for good smoothie green drink recipes. I've got something that I do that I think is pretty good, and I'd love to know things I could add for the hypoglycemia and the anti-inflammatory. And any tips about how frequently you food prep, it's different making for a family than it is making for just one person. It's like the same amount of work and stuff. So that's, I think I communicated the topic and would love to hear some.
Sure. So we're pretty much out of time. So let me just answer quickly, and then we can talk about it more when you and I do our 30-minute consult. We can really dive into that. But I mean, you've really put your finger on an issue for a lot of people, that part of the big challenge around changing our diet is changing our habits around food prep. And that includes finding recipes, buying the food, and prepping the food, and then eating the food. So there's, and that's not even including all the emotional elements around changing our diet. That's just logistics. So you're right that it is a big logistical effort to change, to, get to eat the way that we want to be eating. I think on one foot, and just in the minute that we have, I would say that the best thing to do is to just take little bits on at a time. So rather than sort of try to overall haul your diet all at once, change little things at a time. So maybe just learn 3 new smoothie recipes and change your breakfast to a really healthy smoothie every day. And that's one thing that you can do, and do that for a few weeks, and then, okay, now I'm ready to do something else. As opposed to, that's sort of how I got into the raw foods diet, was I changed little things at a time over a few months, and then I made some bigger changes. But to start off small and doable, as opposed to trying to do a big overhaul. That's certainly one thing I would recommend. And I can say that, Kris Carr, and the way you spell her name is KRISCARR. That's KRISCARR. In terms of smoothies and green juices, she has a lot of recipes just on her website, and then she has a whole book about them as well. But that's KRISCARR. And then somebody else who has a lot of smoothie and green juice recipes is Jennifer Kornbleet. So that's just Jennifer, and then Kornbleet, CORNBLEET. That's CORNBLEET. And both of those ladies have a lot of good smoothie and juice recipes on their websites, and they also both have books with them that could be helpful to you. So we can talk more about all of that.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. But Diane, you know what? Now it's after 3:30, so we need to go. But I hope you've signed up for your 30-minute consult, so we can really dive into this deeper.
I haven't yet, but I will.
Okay. And did you just have a clarifying question about one of those ladies?
Yeah.
Or
just about, are there good nutritionists or medical practitioners that can help one know what specific things they should go after for their smoothie recipes, for their meal recipes? Like, how does someone get that solid based on what's actually going on with them, so you're not just running.
Yeah, right. That's a great question. It's more than just a little clarifying question. I don't have time to do it justice right now. But you know what? If you want to email that to me, then I can start with that next Wednesday on our next Q&A question. It's a great question. Okay, well, thank you everybody so much for being on and for participating so much today. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone gets a chance to, if it makes sense for you, if you're drawn to it, get to work with the journaling or the listening partnerships this week. And I will be in touch on Sunday and Friday with my emails, and I look forward to doing the consults with you. I really want to encourage everybody again to sign up for those. Find that link that Liz sent you. If you haven't signed up yet, then do sign up. Okay, have a fantastic week and take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.